few occasions when it was shown to me when someone else had pictures of it. They would show me images of nude ladies, nude women. I guess they call it pornography. It was in a magazine, Penthouse magazine, or some of the other magazines. I don't know what they call them, but occasionally as a teenager and in my 20s, I'd be hanging out with someone or acquainted with somebody, and they might have a dirty magazine, they called it, and they would open up a page and show it to me. Or now they just show you, people come up to me at random and try to show me pictures of either their naked spouses or girlfriends or a nude picture that they found on the internet somewhere. But yeah, they were adults. They weren't underage. At least that's what it looked like. But I never looked at it myself. I take that back. I did look at some nude pictures of nudity when I was some time ago. It was for a brief period, and but I repented and didn't do it again. But it's people get caught up in that. They get addicted to it. They get engrossed into it, and then they go beyond the confines of the law because they get so steeped in it that it takes them further into the pit of immorality and sin, and all that stuff is considered sinful in the Bible. By the religious community, not just the Christian Jewish Bible, but the Quran. I'm sure it talks about that. I'm sure the Muslims have limitations on what they are allowed to expose themselves to, and sometimes it's willful exposure. The temptations there, and you look at it, that's willful. You give into it, but then there's things that happen that aren't under your control. Someone comes up to you and shows you a quick image of something, or you're scrolling through pages on your social media, and all of a sudden you see some gal, a nude photo of some gal or some guy. It's there. It's the image. The images kind of stay with you, unfortunately. So that's why the religious community says, "Hey, be careful." That's what you expose yourself to, because it does have a corrupting influence on people, and you can be tainted. If you're pure and you're clean, just like if you wear a white suit. If you're pure, and white is a sign of purity. If you spill coffee on it or get dirt on it, or fragments of food on it, it's going to really be noticeable. It's not going to be attractive. And that's what dirt is. Sin is not attractive. Yeah, it's enticing initially, before you get tainted with it, before it stains your nice, clean, pure garments. And then you got to take those off and wash them and try to scrub the stains out, and you're not always successful, because sometimes the stains stay with those clean white garments, and you've got to dispose of those once they get corrupted, and you have to purchase new white garments. It's the same way, and it talks about that in the prophetic books of the Bible. It talks because white, like I said, white is a symbol of purity and holiness and righteousness and morality. It talks about how we're going to be given the faithful devotees of service to God and faith in God and humility before God. That those righteous acts of the saints, the righteousness of the saints, is going to be rewarded, but not by their own righteousness, but by the righteousness of God. God will give them pure garments to put on before they enter heaven. white garments, which is they're going to be made pure, they're going to be made perfect, holy, and totally moral. There's going to be no spot or wrinkle or blemish on their soul, or on their bodies, or on their new spiritual bodies. They're not going to have any, not even a small sliver of corruption. It's going to be, so it's going to be great to have those pure garments. Because man, yeah, I do. It's interesting because, and that would explain a lot of guilt, why people feel so guilty, because when it's brought up, or when their sins are exposed or pointed out, because that's God placed that what do you call it? Those sensors in our as a moral accountability for morality. When we feel bad about something or guilty about something, that's because that's something that God placed there. He created those sensors in our body. Like we have sensors, like glands and all that in our bodies. Well, He put these sensors in our souls and spirits that we violate our conscience, we feel guilty about it. And that's kind of like the moral design. And that's how we know right from wrong, not just by what our parents or the authorities that try to teach us. They try to teach us about legal codes and morality and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and that's good too. But we also have a natural ability to discern right from wrong, because it's encoded. It's probably encoded into our DNA. When we sense evil, we can sense wrong, we can sense bad, and that's how we are able to decipher between what's acceptable and not acceptable. And some people ignore it, and they ignore it for so many years, and they become hardened to it, just numb to it. They become desensitized. So what happens is, pretty soon it's not shameful anymore. It's not shameful or detestable or gross or disgusting. Now it's no big deal. It's everyone else is doing it. It's or maybe they don't even think about it. It's suppressed. They justify themselves, or they just don't sit back and weigh things out, just to examine how it really looks. Because that's why you see these guys in court, for crimes that they commit in those areas. Sometimes they're sitting there and they're either guilty and remorseful, or they're not. Well, the ones that aren't remorseful are the ones who have become hardened, or seared. Their conscience are seared as if with a hot iron. The Apostle Paul says in one of his letters in the Bible that he wrote to one of the churches in Asia Minor or whatever. He says that their consciences are seared. Meaning their conscience, their conscience lets you know when you're thinking bad or doing bad or saying something bad, and all of a sudden, and it pricks you. Your conscience pricks you and says, "Oh," and you start to feel bad because it's legitimate. Usually, you either did something in your past that you haven't confessed or acknowledged before God and man, and it's just gonna grind on you if you dwell on it, or if you're reminded of it. When you're reminded of it, then that can be bothersome and be an irritant, because obviously it's a thorn. It's a thorn in your side, and not in the sense that St. Paul used it, but in the sense that it's a thorn in your side as a good thing, because it's prompting you to to try to make amends to whoever who was affected by your sin or whatever, whether it be verbally or physically or emotionally, or just omissions or sins of commissions and sins of omissions. The omissions is what you should have done and you didn't do, and commissions is what you did that you shouldn't have done. Either way, it's a sin. It's a sin against God and humanity. And we have to weigh those out before God. God wants us to have a clear conscience. He wants us to walk by faith, not by sight. I tell you, there's a lot of things that cause people to stumble when you look at it or hear it. Conversations from other people, images. It can really be a stumbling block. That's why I don't disagree with people that go into the priesthood and want to be monks, because they're kind of shelter themselves from exposure. They still have their own sinful nature to deal with, and they have to always put their own sinful nature in check. Check their own self every day, every morning they wake up, and surrender to God and say, hey God, I'm a sinful person and I have these tendencies, but I want you to just give me courage and power and strength to